Good evening, studio audience, and thank you so much for returning from the station break or even just now tuning in from our networks and various affiliates around the world in what had been described as a watershed moment for the former CDC director shortly before her rather abrupt departure. She had claimed that, to be quite frank, we are responsible for some pretty dramatic, pretty public mistakes, from testing to data to communications. Surely we have learned by now that we greatly underestimate this virus at our own peril, said the former director of the WHO at the end of December 2021, as I recall. And we can use these quite thought-provoking comments as a convenient segue to picking up where we had left off before our program station break that had interrupted our little game show this evening. We had been engaged in a deathmatch competition with our distinguished contestants, surviving competitors who had been reputed as veritable experts in their fields of endeavor, having reached a pinnacle of achievement in excellence as rated by their very prominent peers. And we now return to this broadcast already in progress. Oh, and that signal tells us that it's now time for the Daily Double. All awarded prize sums will be double the amount they had been in the regular competition, and this is a good one. Please, gentlemen, listen very carefully as I say these terms. Immunogenicity. I'll repeat that. Immunogenicity. That's the first clue. Correlates of protection. I'll say that again. Correlates of protection. One more clue, gentlemen. Infectious dose. Infectious dose. Our judges have provided some definitions on this last term as defined by the CDC, the quantifiable quantum, as measured in particles required to transmit an infection. Yes, finally, a response from an expert fact checker in our journalism industry. Your response, please. Epidemiological metrics for assessing risk. Epidemiological metrics for assessing risk. You say that so well. Epidemiological metrics for assessing risk. Is it on the big board? Science says. Wow. That really was so very close. And our judges unfortunately wanted something a little more. Epidemiological metrics that are prerequisite knowledge for developing an effective vaccine without requiring a large sample size phase 3 clinical trial. Old story as I would quite have expected more people to remember transitioning to phase 3, but it is what it is, apparently. I wish I could give you credit for that answer, but it is incomplete. And our judges were looking for those few extra details in reasonable care. In fact, on May 7th, the CDC had quite specifically published a scientific report to detail a summary of what was then known about the novel virus and had expressly stated that the infectious dose of SARS-CoV needed to transmit infection has not yet been established. Prerequisite knowledge for an effective vaccine. And this admission was published just 3 months before the Pfizer countermeasures product had been approved by the FDA for private label marketing, while the products themselves have been floating around since December 2020 and being administered to people. But still so close, so very close, but not close enough. Gentlemen, please assist this representative of our free press while he now departs our stage. And let's move on now with the competition for our remaining contestants. Please, gentlemen, Listen very carefully again to these critical clues. No wider community spread. No wider community spread. These are clinical findings. Clustered outbreaks. Clustered outbreaks. No evidence of asymptomatic, and remember this term, asymptomatic transmission. No evidence of asymptomatic. Yes, General, your response.
You know you can't win a war by roosing up intelligence. This sounds like the intel we found during the outbreak in China.
Is that your final answer, General? General?
Affirmative.
Ooh, I'm so very sorry, General. We really needed to get that answer in the form of a question. We did give the doctor a little bit more mercy, but now we're moving a little bit faster, and our judges would have expected a response that reflected that from these findings it would not be clear whether they correlated with the presence of an infectious virus, as even the WHO had written on page 35 of their 40-page investigative report on the outbreak in China, published February 24th, 2020. This anomalous characteristic, according to our judges, had been an implicit assumption in the Barnacle List report by the U.S. Navy investigators after the outbreak aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt, finding the outbreak not spreading to other ships, even in the carrier group, as well as in the CDC report on the limited super spreader event that had occurred in January 2020 at the restaurant in Guangzhou, and had been a specific finding in both reports that had been published in cooperation with CDC on the outbreak at Provincetown in Barnstable County, as well as in the operations report prepared by Cornell University when they had decided to depopulate their campus for whatever reason. However, I'm quite afraid and so disappointed to assume that now we are quite out of remaining time. And so apparently the only returning champion we have left standing is our expert from the legal community, who had quite cleverly elected a right to remain silent throughout the entire heated competition. A well-played hand indeed. And we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor to see what he won. Don't go away now. If not, life goes on.
This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.
This has been a Filmways presentation, darling.
And y'all go back now.
Yeah.